Good morning guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we're getting straight into it because we are covering an absolute masterclass in the Champions League second leg from Manchester City, of course against Real Madrid. They completely blew them away. I have never seen Real Madrid personally perform like that in a Champions League knockout game. From Manchester City's point of view, it's one of the best semi-final performances you will ever see. Again, personally, that I've ever seen. It was near perfection from Pep Guardiola. The way that he had his side set up this particular game was absolutely unbelievable. However, I can't help but feel that Ancelotti really did play into his hands. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the tactics which we saw during the game, certain players which performed phenomenally well, and also just certain things which led to the goals. So, let's get straight into it with the tactical board. And there is going to be very little emphasis on Manchester City playing the ball out from the back because there weren't many situations when they were at the back. You know, we often talk about a structure which a team might use from a goal kick, for example. But for a team to have goal kicks, the other team needs to be taking shots. Real Madrid didn't get the ball particularly close to the Manchester City goal at any point. There were still stages where Ederson's involved with his passing, but it wasn't a massive theme of the game. So instead we can quickly move the two teams into their shapes further up the pitch. And Manchester City once again used a back three shape, with Diaz moving into the middle, Akanji's going to come in from left back, Walker from right back, and John Stones is going to step forward and play in a double pivot alongside Rodri. Now, before we go any further with this particular kind of match coverage, we need to talk about John Stones. For me, right now, the role that he is playing, he is one of the best midfielders in Europe at the moment. But he's also one of the best centre-backs in the world. So John Stones deserves so much credit. Of course, Pep Guardiola also for moving him into this position. But what I want you guys to do, before we go any further, get in the comments down below and tell me a name for this role. We've seen fullbacks move into this position, into an inverted fullback position, but we are seeing a centre-back moving into midfield. And it's not just a case of he's moving into midfield. In possession, he starts there. He receives with his back to play. That is not something we've seen before. This isn't a half-back like we've seen. This isn't a libero, which we've seen before. This isn't sweeper. This is unlike anything which I can recall seeing. So let me know a name for this role. I've seen ascending centre-back kind of used. I quite like the idea of that name. But let me know a name for this role, because the way that Stones is doing it is absolutely brilliant, and I personally have never seen anything like it before. But that's something which has been happening a lot recently. To get back specifically to this game, Real Madrid just couldn't deal with City's build-up structure. So Real Madrid went for the 4-2-3-1 initially out of possession. We've got Cruz is going to be on De Bruyne in this area, Valverde is going to be a bit deeper on Gundogan, Modric is kind of playing at the tip of the midfield, then we've got Rodrigo and Vinicius are going to both come quite narrow. Instantly we can see Manchester City have the overload, because Manchester City have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players in this area, up against just the 4 of Real Madrid. It's a complete mismatch, especially when Vinicius and Rodrigo don't defend with the greatest intensity you'll ever see. It's far too easy for City in these positions. So this 5 versus 4, it was easy. Even if the ball is here and Madrid kind of lock on and press like this, the City players are too good. They're too good at switching the play into this area to Walker, or going back and then across, or taking responsibility to step forward themselves. Manchester City players in the 5 versus 4, they are simply too good. So this was an error from Ancelotti. He either needed to get another man to push higher, or not bother pressing, because this just didn't really work, and it allowed them to be played through far too easily. Now from here we then have the next overload, and that is the Manchester City box midfield of Rodri, Stones, De Bruyne and Gundogan, 4 of the best midfielders in the world, up against Valverde, Cruz and Luka Modric. So again, it's an overload. It's a 4 versus 3 situation. And already we can see the problems which Real Madrid are going to face, and why this is a tactical masterclass from Pep Guardiola, because he had his players overloading the opposition in literally every single phase of play. And that takes special players, but also special tactics to do that. It was simply phenomenal. And the way that they progressed the ball in these areas, honestly, it was easy. We saw John Stones regularly striding forward with the ball into these areas. We saw Rodri striding forward effortlessly, really moving the ball forward with ease. Now, of course, when you do that, it kind of gives Valverde a decision to make. Does he come out and press Rodri and leave Gundogan free, or does he sit a bit deeper on Gundogan, but now Rodri can carry the ball forward? So that is one of the ways which City were really easily able to progress the play. Now, to be fair, Madrid occasionally kind of had a countermeasure to that, and that was moving Rodrigo and Vinicius both really central like this. Basically, they're trying to make themselves a 5-man midfield and make it really compact. The problem this created, though, was that it left so much room for Akanji and Walker to now step forward with the ball. And with Manchester City dominant and on top, they were confident and felt that they could do this with minimal risk of being counter-attacked. So we regularly saw Akanji stepping forward into this position here, and also Kyle Walker down this side as well. And we'll actually see it for one of the goals that Kyle Walker is in this advanced position. Now what City can do from here, again, is progress the ball really easily, because now they have a simple pass out to Bernardo Silva on this side, or from Akanji to Grealish on this side. It really is, again, really easy. And the thing with Bernardo Silva and Grealish is they are both good at carrying the ball forward. They don't always go 1 versus 1, although we will come back to that, but even when they don't do that, they still carry the ball forward really well and allow City to just gradually move up the pitch. Now, another reason which this worked so well for City is because they are so good at pinning players back. So, let's kind of explain what I mean by that. So let's say Akanji's got the ball here. What some teams will do is, Real Madrid for example, drop Modric a little bit deeper, and as Akanji's stepping forward, you've got Valverde. He's going to be ready to kind of cover this. He's on Gundogan, but say the ball goes out to Grealish, he might be able to slide across and intercept. That's how a lot of teams would defend this situation. So they'd have these midfielders on both sides of the pitch, where if the pass goes, your central midfielders are given that license to step out and try and intercept with cover in the middle. Manchester City didn't let the Real Madrid midfielders do that, and again, it's because of pinning. And by that, I mean players making runs off the ball, pinning Real Madrid players back towards their own goal so they can't step out and intercept these situations. And Gundogan moving really high, man marked by Valverde, and De Bruyne doing the same with Toni Kroos. It pinned Real Madrid right back into their own defensive third very quickly. The two of them, De Bruyne and Gundogan moving forward, pinned Madrid all the way back. And this is what made it, again, really very easy to progress the ball forward, both out wide, but also through the centre of the pitch as well. Before we continue with the analysis, I want to talk to you guys about JerseyFIFA.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that's the latest home shirts, the latest away shirts, tracksuits, or even retro kits, Jersey FIFA has a bit of everything. There really is something for everyone, so if you are interested, then make sure to use the link in the description down below and head to JerseyFIFA.com. Now, of course, with City progressing the ball forward so easily and so well, then they have the potential for overloads. Again, with Gundogan kind of pushing forward and pinning Madrid back and De Bruyne doing the same on the other side, you now create potential for combination play. Whether it be Gundogan underlapping into this sort of area, Grealish finding him, or even Gundogan kind of underlapping, dragging Carvajal away, but now Grealish has got more room to attack. And we saw the same on the other side of the pitch as well. We always see it down the other side. Bernardo Silva getting the ball into this sort of position, and De Bruyne making this underlapping run in behind the defence. Bernardo's going to find him 9 times out of 10, and then crosses come into the box. So this was something which Manchester City done very well, and it was a massive problem for Madrid, because the progression for City was so easy, but then they had these combinations in the final third. Now, there's no time to pause to catch my breath, because the ways in which Manchester City were attacking just keep coming. Because the other major weapon they had was that the two wingers were super aggressive. Now, what we saw in the first leg last week was a Manchester City side which were quite passive, that didn't want to lose the ball, and more importantly, didn't want to lose the match. This Manchester City side, rather than trying not to lose, this week they actively went for the win. And Grealish and Bernardo Silva gave the fullbacks a torrid time. Bernardo Silva's dribbling in recent weeks has been absolutely phenomenal. The way he's beat certain players has been incredible. But for me, it's Jack Grealish which is the difference maker in this team. We're going to see that he also helps massively from a defensive point of view later on in the video. But on the ball in this game, the way that he went at Carvajal time and time again was just ridiculously good. Carvajal just could not deal with him, and Jack Grealish is one of the most important players in the world at the moment for his team. Manchester City cannot function the same without Grealish in the side. I know we all kind of throw this criticism at him that he cost £100 million, he doesn't get enough goals and assists, and I get it. But from a structural point of view, the way that this Manchester City team works, Grealish is so key to them. So key. He is a massively vital player. Now, the other thing which we can see for City is that with both wingers carrying the ball forward and being aggressive, alongside De Bruyne and Gundogan also pushing forward, the other thing we can see is that Manchester City have the potential for a 5 versus 4 situation, with Grealish, Gundogan, Haaland, De Bruyne and Bernardo up against the 4 Real Madrid defenders. Now, as the game went on, Real Madrid kind of did drop players a little bit deeper, Modric into this sort of position and Vinicius out wide like so, but it still just wasn't enough because Manchester City was still too good. And what Manchester City done really well was dragged players out of position, particularly down this right hand side over here. they've done a really good job of dragging Camavinga wide. What this does is it opens up this channel alongside David Alaba. And this is a channel which De Bruyne is very, very good at attacking. And unfortunately for Madrid, Modric just couldn't stick with him. From a physical point of view, Modric could not deal with this. So when it was Modric in his position and De Bruyne here, it was a mismatch. And De Bruyne's kind of striding past. Even if Modric goes with him, physically De Bruyne is too strong. I think what Ancelotti should have done was swapped Valverde to this side. I think he would have dealt with the intensity a bit better. But Ancelotti didn't do that, and as a result, Real Madrid continued to get overran. And again, it's just another way in which City progressed the ball incredibly well. The other threat they had in the final third as well was crosses into the box. Haaland, particularly when the crosses are coming in from the left, has the advantage over both Alaba and Camavinga at the far post. We saw that big chance early on where Grealish cuts onto his right foot, crosses the ball in. We also saw a situation where Akanji headed the ball back from this side across goal, and it was all because Haaland wanted to peel onto Alaba. He knew that Militao is a very aggressive defender. Alaba, however, whilst he is very, very good, isn't quite as good in the air, so Haaland felt that he could kind of get chances from that. And ultimately, he should have scored goals in this game, and it was another way which City just constantly caused problems. We can see a couple of these problems for the first two goals using Once Video Analyzer Pro. Really good analysis software. If you want to check it out, there will be a link in the description down below. I really recommend it. But what we can see here is that Kyle Walker has pushed a bit further forward on this occasion because they have the time and the possession to do so. Camavinga is going to get dragged out towards Kyle Walker. This means that there is now a massive open space in behind the defence for Bernardo Silva. And if we just quickly mark Luka Modric, because I forgot to do that beforehand, if we mark Luka Modric in this position, we can see that he's now got to deal with De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva. The ball's going to go inside to De Bruyne, he's going to take a touch, play a really good ball to Bernardo Silva, and it ends up in the back of the net. But it comes from good play from City. They draw Camavinga out, they've then got this space open to the side of Alaba. Modric has to deal with it, and he physically can't. He's not good enough defensively in these positions. It's wonderful from De Bruyne, and it's also wonderful from Bernardo Silva as well. City deserve that 1-goal lead. Then we have the second goal here, and we've got a slightly different thing being taken advantage of. We can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 Real Madrid defenders. City are attacking with a front 5, which means you always end up with a spare man somewhere. Sometimes it'll be on the near side, sometimes it'll be on the far side, but you always end up with a spare man. We can see the defence is really jumbled at this point anyway. It looks like Alaba is at left back, Camavinga's in midfield, not too sure what is going on with the structure. You can't have that sort of lack of organisation against a team as good as Manchester City, because they do things like this. Gundogan makes the run into the open space, being the spare man driving into the box, and it means that Bernardo Silva is also going to find himself free, so when this ball kind of deflects, it comes back to Bernardo Silva, and it's actually a really good header as well. Really enjoyed this finish. Good header over the man on the line and into the back of the net, and honestly, that felt like game over, because City were attacking so well. So what were they doing so well in their attack? They were overloading the first phase, overloading the second phase, overloading the middle of the pitch, but also on the last line as well. The wingers were being super aggressive with the way that they dribbled at their defenders, but also Manchester City had constant runners into the box, which pinned the Real Madrid defence, and that for me was the key. Pinning Madrid back and then overloading the last line. It worked really well. But what I also want to quickly cover is Manchester City's defending as well, because we've seen teams from a possession point of view dominate Real Madrid in the past, but particularly last season in the Champions League. There were a lot of games where Madrid didn't have the ball, but they are so good. They've got players like Luka Modric, Toni Kroos, two of the best midfielders of all time, which means that they have spells where they take the ball away from you because they are so good on the ball. Manchester City did not allow that at any point until the second half, where they kind of dropped off in terms of intensity. The reason for that is because their counter press, but also their normal press, is so good. The counter press becomes because of their system. When you've got two wide centre-backs both playing pretty high because they're dominating possession, plus you've got 4 central midfielders and a front 3, it means that the second you lose the ball, you have players that are ready in position to quickly apply pressure and counter press. And that's something which City done really well, and they didn't let Madrid get out. That counter press from City was really very good, and it stopped Real Madrid kind of playing counter-attack situations. However, what was also really good from City was their standard press, basically. When Real Madrid got the ball from goal kicks, which was quite often, City's press was so good, and it's where, for me, they've improved over what they've had in past seasons. And it comes because of some of the different personnel they've got in the squad. So let's look at how the pressing structure is going to work. Again, Jack Grealish is going to be very important. We've got Erling Haaland is going to pick up David Alaba here. Fairly normal. We've got Bernardo Silva, the right winger, is going to pick up Camavinga. Again, that's pretty normal, the right winger on the left back. What we are now going to see, though, is that Grealish is going to time his movement from the left wing. He's going to come and press Militao and then also Courtois. Now, the reason for this is because Courtois has this tendency to always kick this way. He likes to receive the ball, open his body up onto his left foot, and then play this way. That's how Courtois tends to play. And Grealish knew that. So Grealish knew that if he kind of curved his run, it was unlikely that Courtois would go back and chip the ball the other way. So Grealish managed to force him this way very well. The other thing, though, is of course, sometimes Madrid will still play out. They can go to Cruz in the midfield and then out to Carvajal. That could be a problem. However, Manchester City also had the answer to that, because Kevin De Bruyne pushed all the way up on Toni Kroos to deny the space there. Rodri is going to be on Modric, Gundogan is going to be on Valverde, but then the really interesting thing is Akanji, a centre-back, a right-sided centre-back, playing out of position all the way at left-back, is then going to press when needed all the way up to the left wing on Carvajal. So if this ball is going to go into Cruz and then go this way, Akanji is going to step up and be aggressive. City are going to play really wide back three with Diaz on Rodrigo, Stones on Benzema and Kyle Walker on Vinicius. They're man for man all over the pitch and they press with such intensity. Haaland is really good at pressing. Grealish and Bernardo Silva are two of the best defensive wingers in the world at the moment. De Bruyne, very good at pressing. Gundogan and Rodri, both very good at pressing. We've got the wingers as well in these areas. And then we have the new dynamic which City have from a defensive point of view. In past seasons, we have seen players like Laporte in the defence, we've seen Cancelo, we've seen Zinchenko. All very good ball players, but not actually great defenders. The difference City have this year is they've got Kyle Walker back in the team, who is a better defender. They've got Rodri, who is well over 6 foot tall, but also they have Akanji, who is a good defender. So they have swapped ball playing players for better defensive players, which means that when this ball goes long into this area, in the past this would have been a problem for City, but not this season, because Rodri wins a lot of headers in his area. He's always going to beat Modric. Gundogan against Valverde, we didn't really see that battle, to be fair, but if the ball's going to go long to this wing, Diaz is always going to beat Rodrigo in the air. Long to this wing, Kyle Walker has the physicality but also the pace to deal with Vinicius, and then up here Benzema just didn't have the physicality to hold off John Stones or the pace to offer any threat the other way. And this allowed City to completely suffocate Real Madrid. And that, for me, is why this was a tactical masterclass. It's why it's got a bit of a longer video than what match coverage normally does, because it was just so good. Manchester City were absolutely fantastic. Pep Guardiola deserves so much credit, as do all of his players. They executed the plan pretty much perfectly and deserve their win. Let's see what happens in the final, but in terms of today, that's all I've got to say. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it, and as always, I will see you in the next one.